They told you democracy is the best system ever created. But what if it's full of loopholes? What if the very thing you believe protects your freedom is actually manipulating you, slowing progress, and paving the way for corruption?
If you're here just for flashy edits, you might as well leave now. But if you actually want to understand how democracy can fail, get hijacked, or even turn against the people, then stick around, because what you're about to hear will change the way you see the world. Democracy was first developed in ancient Athens. It was a direct democracy, meaning citizens voted on laws themselves rather than electing representatives. However, this system was far from perfect. Only free male citizens could participate, excluding women, slaves, and foreigners. Over time, democracy evolved into the representative systems we see today. But as societies grew more complex, so did the loopholes and flaws in the system. One of the biggest flaws in democracy is the risk of majority rule turning tyrannical. In a system where decisions are made by majority vote, the rights and interests of minorities can be completely disregarded. While democracy is supposed to be fair, it does not always guarantee justice for everyone. If 51% of the population votes to take away the rights of the other 49%, the decision is still considered democratic, but fundamentally unjust. This is why pure majority rule without safeguards can lead to oppression rather than true equality. A clear real-life example of this can be seen in the racial segregation laws in the United States during the 19th and 20th centuries. Even though African Americans were citizens, the white majority used democratic processes to enforce segregation through Jim Crow laws, which denied black people equal rights in education, public transportation, and voting. These laws were upheld because the majority population supported them, showing how democracy can be used to justify discrimination when the majority's interests are placed above basic human rights. It took Supreme Court rulings, civil rights movements, and constitutional amendments to undo these unjust laws, proving that majority rule alone does not always protect freedom.
This issue is not just a thing of the past. Even today, ethnic and religious minorities in some democratic countries face discrimination due to majority-backed policies. For example, in Myanmar, the Rohingya Muslim minority has been stripped of citizenship and persecuted, despite Myanmar having an elected government. When democratic institutions fail to protect the rights of all citizens, majority rule can become a tool for oppression rather than a system for fairness.
One of the biggest dangers in democracy is that a charismatic leader can rise to power by exploiting public emotions, then gradually dismantle democratic institutions from within. This is how demagogues, leaders who manipulate people through fear, nationalism, or populist rhetoric, gain control. A clear example is Adolf Hitler, who was democratically elected in Germany, but used his position to undermine democracy and establish a dictatorship. More recently, leaders in various countries have weakened judicial independence, silenced opposition, and manipulated elections while still maintaining the appearance of democracy. This shows that democracy, without strong checks and balances, can be used as a tool for an authoritarian takeover, proving that simply having elections does not guarantee freedom. In the United States, powerful lobbying groups play a significant role in shaping political outcomes, often influencing who gets elected and what policies they support. One of the most well-known examples is AIPAC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee, which uses its financial power to back candidates who strongly support Israel. Because of this influence, politicians who criticize Israel or advocate for a more balanced foreign policy risk losing crucial funding and media backing, making it difficult to win elections. This creates a political environment where support for Israel is not just a policy stance, but almost a requirement for holding office. As a result, US foreign policy on Israel is often dictated by lobbying power rather than the genuine will of the voters, showing how money and political pressure can manipulate democracy. If you want to dive deeper into how AIPAC controls US leaders, I made a whole video breaking it down. Be sure to check it out after this one. Another example of how misinformation and influence shape elections is Elon Musk's endorsement of Donald Trump in the 2024 election. As the owner of X, formerly Twitter, Musk has significant control over the political narrative spread on his platform. His support for Trump was not just a personal opinion, It was amplified through social media algorithms, influencing millions of voters. Since people often rely on social media for news, the way information is controlled and presented can manipulate public perception. By suppressing certain viewpoints and promoting others, billionaires like Musk can indirectly sway elections, creating a system where democracy is influenced by wealth and media control, rather than independent, informed decision-making. Democracy is based on the idea that elections represent the people's choice, but in reality, the system can distort outcomes. Factors like gerrymandering, voter suppression, and outdated electoral systems can lead to results that do not accurately reflect what the majority wants. In some cases, a candidate can win without getting the most votes, raising questions about whether the system truly respects the people's will. A major example is the US Electoral College, where a president can be elected despite losing the popular vote. This happened in 2016, when Donald Trump won the presidency despite receiving nearly 3 million fewer votes than Hillary Clinton. The system gave more weight to certain states, allowing Trump to secure victory without winning the majority of American voters' support. Additionally, voter suppression tactics, such as strict ID laws, limited polling stations in certain areas, and purging voter rolls, prevent many citizens, especially minorities and low-income individuals, from voting. This further skews election results, showing that even in a democracy, the outcome may not always represent what the majority truly wants. Democracy often leads to slow and inefficient decision-making because policies require extensive debates, negotiations, and approvals before being implemented. While this system prevents rash decisions, it can also delay urgent actions, especially in times of crisis. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, many democratic countries struggled to enforce lockdowns, distribute vaccines, and provide economic relief quickly due to bureaucratic hurdles and political disagreements. In contrast, authoritarian governments like China swiftly implemented strict measures, controlling the virus more effectively in the early stages. This highlights a fundamental weakness of democracy. While it promotes inclusivity and debate, it often sacrifices speed and efficiency, making it difficult to respond rapidly to emergencies or long-term challenges. One of the weaknesses of democracy is that not all voters are well-informed, yet their votes carry the same weight as those who deeply understand political, economic, and global issues. Many people base their decisions on emotions, personal biases, or short-term benefits, rather than critically analyzing policies and their long-term impact. This often leads to the election of leaders who make popular but unsustainable promises, such as lowering taxes without clear economic planning, or increasing government spending without proper funding. In such cases, democracy can become a system where politicians win by appealing to what people want to hear, rather than what is actually feasible or beneficial for the country. A clear example of this issue can be seen in the 2016 US presidential election, where misinformation and emotional appeals played a major role in voter decisions. Many voters were influenced by false news stories spread on social media, including conspiracy theories about candidates. Studies showed that a significant portion of the electorate believed misleading narratives, such as the claim that Hillary Clinton was involved in a secret criminal organization. Additionally, many voters supported Donald Trump because of his strong rhetoric on issues like immigration and economic revival, even when some of his promises lacked realistic policy backing. This highlights how uninformed or misled voters can contribute to the election of leaders based on emotions rather than rational decision-making, ultimately affecting the quality of governance in a democracy. Democratic leaders often prioritize short-term gains over long-term solutions because they need to win the next election. Instead of focusing on policies that may take decades to show results, politicians promise quick fixes and populist measures to gain immediate public approval. A clear example is climate change policy in the US, where leaders frequently roll back or weaken environmental regulations to appeal to industries and voters concerned about short-term economic growth. Because election cycles are short, politicians often avoid making difficult but necessary decisions, leaving long-term issues like national debt, infrastructure, and climate change unresolved for future generations. When democracy first emerged, it was a revolutionary system that gave power to the people. But over the years, its flaws and loopholes have become more and more obvious. Lobbying, media manipulation, and corruption have turned it into something far from what it was meant to be. So, do you think democracy is still the best system we have? Or is it time for something new? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to see one of the biggest examples of how democracy gets manipulated, check out my video on how AIPAC controls US leaders. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video to spread knowledge.